They told me it would be good for me, that at 73 I was still capable of contributing. But let's be honest, no child asks their mother to scrub clinic floors because they think she's full of potential. They ask because they no longer see her as someone who deserves rest. They ask because they've decided she is now a burden. The mop handle was sticky from the last shift. I ran a disinfectant wipe along it before starting my rounds. Second floor, the private gynecology wing. I'd never seen such expensive silence in my life. Plush chairs, gleaming tiles, fresh-cut lilies at the front desk. And me, in scrubs 2 sizes too big, hair tied back, wiping away the day's footprints. I used to be a librarian. Not at a big university, just a small neighborhood branch, the kind with Sunday readings and shelves that leaned from years of stories. I loved that job. When Dennis was alive, he'd pick me up after my shift, and we'd drive home in silence, the comfortable kind. He's been gone almost 10 years now. A stroke, swift and ruthless. Our home, my home, is a modest one-story in Oakland's Eastmont district. Dennis built the patio with his own hands, painted the door every spring, even after retirement. After he passed, the kids suggested I move. Too much house, Gina had said. Too many memories, Travis added. But it wasn't about memories. It was about control. They moved in gradually. First, Travis. He said it was temporary. Just until I get back on my feet, Ma. That was 6 years ago. Then Mark, after his second divorce. Then Gina, with her 2 kids. She brought her own toaster and insisted on rearranging the spice rack. Within months, my home didn't feel like mine. My kettle started boiling water I didn't ask for. My couch was always occupied, and my decisions, even about what to eat for dinner, were suddenly open to vote. I didn't complain. I told myself it was good to have them close, that I was lucky to have family who still needed me. But then came the suggestion. Ma, I heard about this clinic downtown, Gina had said one morning, flipping pancakes for her kids. They're looking for part-time help, cleaning staff, just 2 days a week. I looked up from my tea. Cleaning? At a medical place? It's easy, Travis chimed in from the hallway. You always say you miss getting out of the house. I miss the library, I said quietly. I miss books, order, quiet. This is quiet, Gina said, and orderly. It's just different. Mark didn't say much, but later that day, he handed me a printed job listing. It had already been filled out, my name in block letters. They didn't ask. They decided. The interview was the next day. I showed up in my best blouse, the same one I wore to Dennis's memorial. I thought maybe if I looked professional enough, they'd reconsider. Maybe someone would say, "We don't hire women your age. Not because you're not capable, but because you deserve rest." But they didn't. They handed me a name tag. Geraldine. Not Mrs. Baker, like at the library. Just Geraldine, the cleaner. The money wasn't the issue. The kids didn't need it. They used my pension to cover groceries. The clinic paycheck went straight to shared expenses. Gas, streaming subscriptions, the new blender Gina wanted. You're contributing, Travis said. You're part of the team. I nodded, because if I didn't, I'd cry. At the clinic, nobody was cruel. Some nodded politely. Most ignored me. Once, a young nurse dropped her smoothie cup and just walked away. I cleaned it up. I always clean it up. After my shift, I waited at the bus stop, my legs trembling. I had driven here, in my car, but Mark had called earlier. He needed it for an urgent meeting. So I sat on the bench, watching the sun lower itself behind the trees, thinking about dinner. Would there be any food left when I got home? Would I need to ask Gina to move her laptop from the dining table again? Would I sit at the edge of my own couch, knees close together, holding a paper plate like a guest? The worst part wasn't the work. It wasn't even the silence. It was realizing that somewhere along the way, I had stopped being mom and started being the old lady who lives here. And maybe, just maybe, they thought I should be grateful. You should be grateful, Mom. Some women your age can't even stand up straight. That's what Gina said when I came home, limping, my knees swollen from scrubbing tile grout with a bristled brush. She didn't say it unkindly, not exactly. Her voice was breezy, distracted, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. I didn't answer. I just eased my shoes off at the front door, balancing against the wall so I wouldn't have to ask anyone for help. My feet had blistered again. The new pair of sneakers I bought with my first clinic paycheck weren't as orthopedic as advertised. I made salad, Gina added from the kitchen. Hope that's okay. We didn't wait. The kids had to eat early. I didn't bother asking if they'd left me any. Instead, I walked past the living room where Travis sat playing something loud and violent on the TV, legs spread across my coffee table like he'd paid for the furniture. He didn't look up. The kitchen light was too bright. The salad bowl was empty, the forks scattered across the counter. An open bag of chips lay beside the blender, crumbs everywhere. I found a single egg in the fridge, fried it in silence, and ate standing up. No one asked how my day was. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I used to sleep well. Dennis used to joke that I could sleep through a hurricane. Now, I woke every 2 hours. From pain, from dreams, from the hum of the hallway light Gina always forgot to turn off. I tried to be grateful. That word, grateful, echoed in my head like a taunt. I was grateful once. For family. For laughter. For the way Travis used to leave me wildflowers in a jar after school. For the way Gina would curl up in my bed when she had nightmares. Even for Mark. Quiet, thoughtful, the kind of boy who'd save his allowance just to buy me a birthday book. They weren't always like this. But somewhere, things turned. Maybe slowly, like water wearing down a stone. You should be grateful, Travis said the next morning when I asked, gently, softly, if he could take his muddy boots off before coming through the living room. You live rent-free in this house, he added, grinning like it was a joke. I stared at him. This is my house. He laughed. Technically. But let's be real, Mom. Without us, who would be here to help you? Help? He said it like a favor. Like staying in my house, eating my food, ignoring my pain, was some kind of sacrifice. You're not exactly independent anymore, Gina said later that evening when she found me rubbing Voltaren into my swollen hands. You need us, too. I nodded. Because what else could I do? Stand up and scream? Pack their bags and throw them into the street? They weren't monsters. They hadn't hit me, hadn't stolen anything outright. They just chipped away at me day by day until there wasn't much left to carve. Mark rarely spoke these days. When he did, it was to mumble something about a job interview or a loan or his ex-wife's demands. But I caught a snippet one evening when he thought I was outside. She's slowing down, he told Gina. We should talk about what happens next. Next? You know, he said. The house. Long-term care. Maybe we should talk to someone. My body froze. They were planning ahead. Planning for when I wouldn't be useful anymore. When I'd stop being the cleaner, the cook, the walking bank account, the doormat. They didn't see me as a person. I was a scenario to manage, an asset, a problem. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired, older than I remembered, but there was something else in my eyes. Not sadness. Resolve. I picked up my phone and opened the contacts. There was a name I hadn't dialed in years, but tomorrow I would. I heard them before I saw them. The kitchen door was slightly ajar, and their voices carried easily into the hallway. Gina's quick, clipped tone and Mark's slower, steadier drawl. They didn't know I was home early. My shift at the clinic had ended 2 hours sooner because the upstairs wing had been closed for maintenance. I hadn't told anyone. I stood by the coat rack, invisible in my own house, listening. "I'm telling you, we should get a valuation," Mark said. "This neighborhood's gone up in price. A sale could bring in a solid 6 figures. "And then what?" Gina asked. "Split it 3 ways? You know Travis is going to demand more. He'll say he sacrificed the most time living here." "I'm not splitting anything with him until he gets a job," Mark replied. "But look, even after costs, we'd each walk away with enough to put down for a place. Small condos, maybe. Fresh starts." Gina lowered her voice. "What about her?" There was a pause. "We'll say it's for her good," Mark said finally. "Assisted living, quiet place, warm food, people her age. She won't have to clean anymore." I stepped back before I heard the rest. My heart wasn't pounding. It wasn't even aching. It was just quiet. Heavy. I walked slowly to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. They weren't even ashamed. They spoke of it like a project, like moving their mother out of her own house, the one Dennis and I saved for, repaired, protected, was just paperwork, just logistics, assisted living, warm food, as if I didn't know how to boil a pot of rice, as if I hadn't kept this family together through job losses, divorces, broken wrists, and broken hearts. Later that evening, they acted normal. Gina asked if I wanted tea. Mark offered to fix the bathroom light, the same one he'd ignored for 2 months. I said no to both. My voice was level, quiet. I think that scared them more than yelling would have. After they went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with the lights off. Just me, and the hum of the fridge, and the envelope I'd pulled from my drawer. Inside was a property deed. Original, signed and notarized. It still had Dennis's scrawl in the corner. For Jerry, always. I traced the letters with my thumb. This house wasn't a project. It was a promise. The next morning, I called my friend from church, Deanna. We hadn't spoken in a while, but I remembered her saying her daughter worked in elder legal services. "Is this about your kids?" she asked gently after I explained. "Yes," I said. "They're trying to move me out. Not today, not directly, but I can see where it's going. Then let's stop it before it starts." That afternoon, I was in an office downtown, across from a young woman in glasses and a cranberry blazer. Her name was Julia, and she didn't waste time. "You're on the title?" she asked. "I am. Sole owner." "Any power of attorney agreements?" "No." "Have they been using your accounts?" I hesitated. "Yes. I pay the utilities. Groceries, internet, their streaming subscriptions. They borrow the car. They have house keys." "Do they pay rent?" "No." "Then we're going to change some things," she said, tapping on her keyboard. We started with a letter, a formal revocation of permission to reside. Not an eviction yet. Just the first step. A warning. Then came the account freezes. We would reassign the utilities in my name only, with new passwords. Close out the shared debit cards. Cancel the automatic transfers. Julia glanced up at me. It's going to cause a scene. I know. Are you ready for that? I looked her in the eye. Yes. She nodded. And the deed? Do you want to place it in a trust? It'll protect it from any future claims. Yes. And I want to change my will. For who? For no one in this house. I left that office lighter than I'd felt in years. Not happy. Not yet. But clear. They thought they could plan my life like a schedule. They thought I was too tired to notice. But they forgot something. I was tired, yes, but I wasn't done. I didn't raise leeches. I didn't raise manipulators or opportunists or children who would look at their mother like a stepping stone instead of a person. At least that's what I told myself. Again and again, while folding the laundry they left piled in the hallway. Mark's shirts, still warm from the dryer. Gina's leggings, twisted inside out like she always did, even when she was 12. Travis's hoodie, the one he wore every single day but never washed unless I did it. Every piece of fabric felt like a betrayal I had stitched myself. When they were small, I taught them how to sort socks, how to press a shirt sleeve flat. Dennis used to say, "You're raising them right, Jerry. Useful, kind kids." He wasn't wrong, not then. Mark used to run next door to shovel Mrs. Holloway's walkway before she could ask. Gina used to bring me sticky notes with poems. Travis built me a birdhouse in shop class, painted it sky blue, even glued on a little wooden sign that said, "Mom's Place." So what happened? I thought maybe it was just the weight of adult life. The bills, the divorces, the exhaustion. Maybe that kindness, that care, just got buried. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized, no, they didn't change. They adapted. They learned how to get what they wanted, how to be sweet when they needed something, distant when they didn't, how to call me strong when they wanted my help, and old when they wanted me quiet. Somewhere along the way, I became a system they relied on, not a person they cherished. I paid for Gina's cosmetology courses. She never finished. I co-signed a loan for Travis's mechanic certification. He dropped out after 3 months. I let Mark take over the garage just until his business picked up. 2 years later, it was still filled with dusty boxes and unpaid invoices. They borrowed, took, promised, forgot. Every time I confronted it, gently, with dignity, they had a reason, a crisis, a breakdown. "We're doing our best, Ma. You just don't understand how hard it is now. It's not like your time." And I accepted it. Because that's what mothers do, right? We forgive. We keep the peace. We bite our tongue when the credit card bill has their pizza charges on it. We don't say a word when the car comes back with an empty tank and a fresh dent. But something shifted that week. After the meeting with Julia, after hearing them discuss plans for my future, I began to notice every little thing. Not just the messes or the silence, but the way they talked to me. "Move, Mom," Travis said, reaching over me to grab the remote. "You still use paper checks?" Gina had laughed. "No wonder your mail's full of junk." Mark, the quietest of the three, never said anything cruel, but he also never stood up for me. Never said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't treat her like this." Silence can hurt more than insults. One night, I stood in the backyard. It was chilly, the patio still stained from last week's barbecue I hadn't been invited to plan. They'd used my grill, my chairs, my lawn, but somehow I'd been asked to stay out of the way so they could host properly. I looked up at the windows glowing with warm light, silhouettes moving around inside. My family, but I didn't feel part of them. I felt like the groundskeeper. The next morning, I cleaned out the hallway closet, not to organize it, to clear it. Every item that wasn't mine, backpacks, skateboards, Gina's Pilates mat, Travis's half-broken drone, went into the garage. I made a pile, then another, then another. By noon, the house looked different. Not empty, just reclaimed. Mark came home first. "What's going on?" he asked, eyeing the boxes. "I'm simplifying," I said. "Making room for myself." He frowned. "You could have asked before moving our stuff." "No," I said, quietly but firmly. "I couldn't." And I walked past him like he was just another guest overstaying his welcome. Because that's what he was. That's what they all were. And I was finally ready to stop pretending otherwise. The lawyer's office smelled like lemon cleaner and worn-out carpet. It was tucked between a closed-down travel agency and a vape shop in a strip mall that had seen better decades. But Julia had recommended this place, said the man who ran it was old school but thorough. That's exactly what I wanted. The receptionist, a young man with a tired ponytail and a chipped mug that said "one paralegal," didn't ask many questions. He handed me a clipboard and gestured toward a small sofa with cracked leather. I filled out my name, Geraldine M. Baker, and wrote "House and Estate Inquiry" in the notes. 15 minutes later, a door creaked open and a voice called, "Mrs. Baker?" The lawyer was in his late 60s, with white tufts of hair and a gray vest that fit too tightly around the middle. His name was Walter Keene. He shook my hand firmly and didn't waste time on small talk. "What do you need protected?" he asked after I sat down across from his cluttered desk. "My home," I said, "and my rights." He looked up, and something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of recognition. Not of me, but of the tone. The tired determination. The quiet line that gets drawn too late, but drawn all the same. He nodded. "Tell me everything." And I did. I told him about the kids, about the way they'd slid into my home, one by one, like water under a loose floorboard. I told him about the job they'd suggested, for her own good. I told him how they used my house, my car, my name, my money. He didn't interrupt, just scribbled on a legal pad and occasionally asked a question. "Do they pay rent?" "No." "Do they receive mail here?" "Yes." "Are they listed as co-owners?" "No. It's my name on the deed. Mine and my late husband's. I never changed it." "Good," he said. "That makes things easier." The rest of the appointment was a blur of legal terms and signatures. We drafted a formal notice of termination, a polite but firm document informing all three of them that they no longer had permission to reside in my home beyond 30 days. Not a formal eviction, not yet, but the first shot across the bow. We discussed a revocable trust to transfer ownership of the house from myself to the trust, protecting it from claims, disputes, or coercion. We reviewed my will, added contingencies, clarified intentions. Walter paused when I told him I had no plans to leave anything to Mark, Gina, or Travis. "That's a serious step," he said. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said. "You want to name someone else?" "Yes. My niece's daughter, Hazel. She lives in Oregon. Calls me twice a month just to check in. Sends me postcards." He nodded again, scribbled the name, and moved on. An hour later, the paperwork was ready. He slid the pages across to me one by one. I signed each with a steady hand. By the time I stepped out of the office, the sun was high and sharp. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, squinting into the light, feeling something unfamiliar swelling in my chest. I think it was power. Not the kind that shouts or stomps or threatens. The kind that moves quietly, steadily, like water carving stone. I took the bus home, even though I'd brought the car. I needed the time. Needed to sit with the weight of what I'd done. I'd changed something permanent. I'd broken the pattern. And I wasn't finished. That evening, I sat at the dining table and wrote 3 letters. One to each child. No anger. No scolding. Just facts. I explained the legal changes. The timeline. The reasons. I told them they would need to start looking for new accommodations within the next 30 days. I said I would no longer be paying for shared groceries, gas, or subscriptions. I gave them the contact information for a moving company I'd prepaid for 2 hours each. My final act of generosity. Then I placed each letter in an envelope, wrote their names in ink, and left them on the table. They were out that night, Gina at her friend's birthday, Mark with someone new, Travis at the gym, though I knew he'd just gone to the bar. I went to bed with the door closed, the letters untouched in the dim kitchen light. Tomorrow would bring noise. Yelling, maybe. Guilt. Blame. But tonight was silent, and it finally sounded like peace. "You're being emotional, Mom." That's what Travis said, standing in the hallway with his arms crossed like he was managing a temperamental tenant, not speaking to the woman who raised him. "You're acting out over nothing, and now you've scared Gina half to death." Gina, who hadn't even come downstairs to talk to me directly, was apparently too shaken by the letter I left to have a conversation. Mark was still at work, though I suspected he'd found a way to stay late on purpose. Avoidance was his preferred method of confrontation. I stood in my living room, with Travis towering over me, trying to speak slowly, calmly, like I was a child about to make a poor choice. "You should have talked to us first," he continued. "Had a family meeting. This letter thing, it's dramatic." "I tried talking," I said. "For years." "No, you just kept doing everything for everyone and then snapped." "That's not healthy communication, Mom." It was almost funny, being lectured about communication by the man who once disappeared for 4 months after maxing out my credit card. "You're calling this dramatic?" I said slowly, "but suggesting I work as a cleaner after 70? Taking over my house without paying a cent? That's just logical?" He blinked. The confidence cracked a little. Then he adjusted. "Okay, maybe we got comfortable. But we're your family. That's what family does. Helps each other. You think I wanted to be here this long?" "Yes," I said. "I do." Silence. He didn't like that answer. He looked toward the stairs as if expecting backup. But no one came. Gina was still hiding. Mark was still gone. He was alone in this one. "You've really changed, you know that?" he muttered. "No," I said. "I've stopped changing for everyone else." He exhaled hard through his nose, frustrated. "Where are we even supposed to go? Rent is insane. I can't just pack up and leave tomorrow." "I gave you 30 days, I replied, "and a moving truck, and a list of rental options within 5 miles. You've been planning this." "Yes," I said, quietly, because loud never worked. He stared at me, his mouth tight. For a moment, he looked like the boy I once scolded for stealing a candy bar. That flicker of embarrassment, of defiance mixed with guilt. But now he was a grown man who thought it was reasonable to shame his mother for reclaiming her life. "I thought we were supposed to be a team," he said finally. "We were," I said, until I realized I was the only one contributing. He didn't have a response to that. Later that evening, Mark came home. I was in the kitchen making tea when he walked in slowly, holding the letter like it might explode. "Is this real?" he asked. "Yes." He didn't yell. Mark never yells. He just looked tired. "You're really kicking us out?" "I'm asking you to live your own lives, somewhere else." "But why now?" "Because I'm tired, Mark. Tired of being the one who fixes everything. Tired of being used. Tired of watching you all forget that I'm not just a support beam in this house. I'm a person." He sat down heavily at the table. "You didn't even warn us." I set the teacup in front of him. "I gave you years of warnings. You just stopped listening." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Gina's crying," he said. "Travis is furious." I'm not surprised. He looked up at me. "And you're just okay with that?" "No," I said. "But I'm okay with not being okay for a while, if it means I can breathe again." Neither of us spoke for a long time. Eventually, he reached for the tea, but didn't drink it. "You really aren't changing your mind." "I really am not." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess we have to figure it out." "Yes," I said. "You do." He left the room like an old man, shoulders slumped, steps slow. Not defeated, just forced to see what I had seen for years. That night, no one spoke to me again. Doors stayed closed. Lights stayed off. It was the quietest the house had been in a decade. And for the first time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I canceled everything. Subscriptions, auto payments, joint accounts. One by one, I severed the strings that tied my name to their needs. The first stop was the bank. I'd made an appointment with a woman named Claire who wore no makeup and had the firm voice of someone who'd seen this type of conversation more than once. "They're not listed on the account directly," she said, scanning the screen, "but you have multiple auto transfers to utilities, food delivery services, a joint gas card, and a Venmo link that regularly sends to a Gina B and a T Baker. That them?" "Yes." "Would you like those transfers canceled?" "Yes, all of them, immediately." She hesitated. "You sure you want to do this all at once? It may cause tension." "There's already tension," I said. "I just stopped pretending not to feel it." She nodded and began typing. "Anything else you'd like us to freeze or restrict?" "My credit card. I'd like to reissue it and remove all authorized users." Claire raised her eyebrows. "They've been using your card?" "For everything from groceries to streaming services to fast food." She didn't comment, just clicked a few more keys. "And I want a new PIN for my debit card. And a password reset for my online account. Something only I know." "Done," she said. "Everything's in motion. You'll get new cards in the mail. They won't have access anymore." As I signed the final confirmation form, she looked at me and said quietly, "Good for you." I didn't reply. I just nodded. From the bank, I walked 2 blocks down to the phone store. The clerk was barely 20, chewing gum behind the counter. "I want to change my family plan," I said. "I'm the primary account holder. I'd like to downgrade to a single line. You know, if you do that, your dependents will lose service, right?" "I'm aware." He blinked, glanced at the name on the account. "All right, just need your ID." 15 minutes later, Gina, Mark, and Travis would each find themselves without cell service. And for the first time in years, I wouldn't be paying to be ignored. I went home feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. It wasn't anger, not really, not even vengeance. It was like untying a knot that had been pulling on my chest for years. The moment it loosened, everything else inside me could breathe again. When I walked through the front door, No one looked up. Travis was on the couch, scrolling endlessly. Gina was in the kitchen, earphones in, humming. Mark wasn't home. The silence was convenient. It gave me space to work. I printed a list of updated accounts and passwords, placed it in my locked desk drawer. I removed my name from the shared grocery app. I unlinked all my cards from their phones. By dinner time, it was done. At 6:42 p.m., Gina opened the fridge and called out, "Did you cancel the HelloFresh order?" "Yes." She poked her head around the corner. "Why?" "Because I'm not paying for it anymore." Her eyebrows pulled together. "But we eat that together." "No," I said gently. "You all eat it. I pay for it." There was a pause, a very long pause. "Okay," she said slowly. "So are we supposed to do everything ourselves now?" "Yes." She didn't respond, just disappeared into the kitchen again. Travis found out next. "Ma," he said, holding up his phone, "why is the gas card declined?" "Because I closed the account." "You could have told me." "You would have asked me not to." He scoffed. "What am I supposed to do now? I've got a delivery shift tomorrow." "You'll have to figure it out." "Unreal," he muttered. "Just unreal." And then under his breath, like a reflex, "You're being spiteful." I didn't rise to it. Let him believe whatever he needed to believe. Let them all. Later that evening, Mark came in and asked calmly, "Did you change the Wi-Fi password?" "Yes." "Could I have it?" "No." He paused. "Why not?" "Because I'm paying for it now, and it's for me." He didn't argue, just walked into his room and shut the door. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the house creak and shift like it always did around this hour. But it sounded different now. Not like a space under siege. Not like a woman holding everything up with two tired hands, just like a house, mine, and finally, only mine. Dinner that night was quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The strained kind where everyone chews carefully, waiting for someone else to break the silence first. The air felt thick, like the moments before a storm. I'd made roasted vegetables and chicken. Simple, the way I liked it. No one said thank you. They just sat, tense, suspicious, pretending everything was fine. Mark cut into his chicken too hard, the knife clattering against the plate. Gina picked at her food like a teenager on punishment. Travis scrolled his phone under the table, not even trying to hide it. "You could have at least told us before you canceled everything," Gina said finally. Her tone was soft, almost reasonable, but the edge was there. "I left letters," I said. "That's not a conversation, Mom," she shot back. "That's a threat, written in cursive." "I wrote them so no one could twist my words later," I replied evenly. "We've had plenty of conversations. None of them made a difference." Travis smirked. "Guess we know where we stand." "Yes," I said quietly. "Now you do." Mark put his fork down. "You've gone too far, Mom. We're family. You don't do this to family." "Family?" I repeated, setting my glass down. "Family doesn't live off one person's back and call it love." He looked away. Gina sighed dramatically. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. We just need time to figure things out." "You have 3 weeks left," I said. "That's time." Travis shoved his plate away. "So that's it? You want us gone? You win?" "Congratulations, Mom. You finally got your house to yourself." I didn't answer. He pushed his chair back and stood. "You know what? Enjoy it. You'll regret this." Then he left the table, heavy steps shaking the floorboards. Gina followed, muttering, "I can't deal with this." Mark lingered for a moment. He looked at me the way he used to when he broke something as a kid. caught between guilt and resentment. "You didn't have to make it war," he said. "It became war when I stopped surrendering," I replied. He didn't have an answer for that, just shook his head and left. I sat alone, staring at 3 half-empty plates. The house hummed around me. Refrigerator, pipes, faint music from Gina's room upstairs. For years, I'd dreamed of quiet. I used to imagine having one evening where no one needed me. No one asked for money or rides or meals. Now I had that quiet. It didn't feel like I expected. It wasn't joy. It wasn't grief. It was a hollow space where something used to ache, and finally didn't. I cleared the table slowly, washed the dishes by hand. It used to annoy me when Dennis insisted on doing that, even after we bought a dishwasher. "Slows you down," he'd say. "Makes you think." He was right. As I rinsed each plate, I thought about the first night after his funeral. The kids had promised they'd take care of me. "You'll never be alone, Mom." I believed them. And maybe, in some way, they believed it too, until convenience replaced love, until help became habit, until my presence became expected, not valued. I dried the last glass and set it upside down on the rack. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear Gina's whisper upstairs. "She's lost it," she was saying. "She actually thinks she can just, what, live like we never existed?" A pause. Then Travis's voice, low and bitter. "We'll see how long she lasts when she needs something." My jaw tightened. Need. That was the word that defined me to them. Not mother, not woman, just someone who needed to be managed. I turned off the kitchen light and went to my room. On my nightstand sat a photo of Dennis holding the twins on his shoulders, Mark beside them, beaming. We looked like any other family. Messy, imperfect, loving. I touched the frame. "I tried," I whispered. Then I climbed into bed, pulled the blanket up, and let the stillness settle. It wasn't comfortable, but it was mine, and that, I decided, was enough for tonight. They were all home when I said it. Not by design, just one of those rare moments when the house aligned. Mark had taken the day off because of a migraine, which meant he'd been in his room with the curtains drawn and his laptop glowing. Gina's shift at the salon got canceled, and Travis, predictably, still hadn't found new work. I waited until after lunch, made coffee, set out 4 mugs on the table like I used to on Sundays. They sat, eventually, curious, guarded. I didn't drag it out. "I want you out by the end of the week," I said. "Not 30 days, not 2 more weekends. This week, Saturday latest." 3 pairs of eyes locked on me, blinking. Gina was first to respond. "What?" Her voice cracked into a laugh. "You said we had time. I gave you time. You wasted it." "That's not fair," Mark said. "We've been looking." "No," I said calmly. "You've been circling the idea of looking. You've been acting like this is a bluff. It's not." Travis scoffed. "So now you're evicting your own children? You stopped being children when you decided I was optional." That landed. I saw it in Gina's face. The twitch of her mouth, the way she looked down at her lap. But she didn't speak. "Where are we even supposed to go?" Mark asked. "You think we can just pack up and vanish?" "I think that's exactly what you did to me," I replied. Travis leaned forward. "This is about punishment, right? You're getting even." "No," I said. "I'm drawing a line. There's a difference." They were quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when the usual tactics stop working. Guilt, distraction, charm. None of it reached me anymore. Gina finally stood. Her voice was small. "I have 2 kids, Mom. You want to uproot them because you're mad at us?" I looked at her. You've lived in this house rent-free for 4 years. You've never asked what I need. You've never cleaned the bathroom without being told. And you let your children speak to me like I'm furniture. I love them. I do. But they've learned from your example, and that's what scares me most. She didn't reply, just turned away and left the room. Travis followed. Mark stayed seated. I'm not defending any of it, he said. I know we let things rot. I knew it the second you changed the locks on the shed. I hadn't known he'd noticed. So change, I said. He nodded once, slowly. You really don't want us here anymore. I want peace, I said, and I can't have it while carrying 3 adults who don't see me. He didn't argue. When he left the room, I sat alone with the cold coffee and 4 mugs, untouched. That evening, the house moved differently. Doors opened and closed quietly. Boxes appeared in hallways. Gina made calls in hushed tones. Travis sulked, but didn't raise his voice. They didn't apologize. I didn't expect them to. I wasn't looking for redemption, just the door, and they were walking toward it. The house was quiet now, not the forced silence of sulking or tension, but a stillness that settled deep in the floorboards, in the walls, in me. They hadn't left yet, but something had shifted. Boxes lined the hallway. Gina had started cleaning out the kids' room. Mark borrowed duct tape from the garage. Travis, after 2 days of slamming doors and muttering under his breath, finally went to look at a room for rent posting pinned to the grocery store bulletin board. No one asked for dinner. No one complained about the Wi-Fi. No one called me emotional. And I could breathe. It felt strange, the space. Not just physical, though that too. There were gaps now on the coat hooks, in the fridge, on the shoe rack by the door. But more than that, there was mental space. The kind that had been missing for years. I hadn't realized how much of my attention was spent managing their presence, even when they weren't speaking to me. Now, for the first time in a long time, my mind wandered again. Freely. I found myself humming while washing dishes. I rearranged the spice rack back the way I liked it. I opened the windows. Let light in. I sat in the sunroom that Dennis built with his own hands, back when we thought retirement would be slow and golden. I hadn't used that room in almost a decade. The kids had turned it into a laundry dump, a holding zone for unfolded clothes and forgotten hobbies. But now it was mine again. I cleaned it for 3 hours straight. Vacuumed, wiped, opened all the windows. I aired out the years, lit a candle, set a small table by the window, placed my mother's porcelain teacup on it. No reason, just because it was pretty. Just because I wanted to. That night, I made dinner only for myself. A small plate of lentils with roasted carrots, a piece of buttered toast, and a boiled egg. I set the table with 1 placemat, 1 glass, 1 fork. No one asked where theirs was. They were beginning to understand. After dinner, I opened a book I hadn't touched since Dennis passed. A novel we'd both loved in our younger years. The kind that smelled like yellowed pages and old bookstores. I read 3 chapters in silence, the words wrapping around me like an old quilt. Later, I wandered the house slowly. I stopped in the hallway and looked at the picture frames. Dusty, crooked, long ignored. I straightened them, wiped each one down. A younger me smiled back from behind the glass, holding a baby Mark, sitting beside Gina at her first recital, laughing with Travis at the beach. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because the sadness wasn't heavy anymore. It was light, bearable. A memory, not a wound. When I reached my bedroom, I paused in the doorway. I'd changed the sheets that morning, hung up fresh curtains, lit a small lamp beside the bed. For the first time, the room didn't feel like a place I escaped to. It felt like a sanctuary. I sat on the edge of the bed, pressed my hand flat against the mattress, and let out a long breath. It was working. Not smoothly, not cleanly, but it was working. They were leaving, and I, after years of being invisible in my own home, was starting to see myself again. I wrote them a letter, not because they asked for one, not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted to leave behind more than silence when they walked out that door. I sat at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand and 3 sheets of cream-colored paper, the kind I used to save for thank you notes and Christmas cards. I didn't want to write with anger. I wasn't interested in bitterness. I just wanted to tell the truth, clearly and without apology. Each letter was nearly the same. Dear Name, I've been your mother your whole life. You've been my child for just as long. And that is a bond no piece of paper can erase. Not this letter, not a trust document, not a deed to this house. But love, like any living thing, needs air, room to breathe. And I haven't had that in a very long time. This house, my house, was never meant to become a shelter from responsibility. It was meant to be a place of return, not a place to hide. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being a mother and became a resource. You didn't ask how I felt. You didn't check what I needed. You only came closer when something broke, when something ran out, when something was missing, and I was expected to fill in the blank. You may see this moment as punishment, as rejection, but it is neither. It's a boundary. You are adults, grown people, and you must live like it. I did not raise you to depend on anyone but yourselves. I did not raise you to treat anyone, least of all me, like a means to an end. I raised you to be kind, capable, honest. And if you've forgotten how to be those things, it's time to remember. I'm reclaiming this space not to push you away, but to come back to myself. I am still a person. I am still a woman. I am still Geraldine, not just Mom. You have a week left. Use it wisely. Pack your things. Make your plans. And when you walk out of this house, know that I will not close the door forever, but you will have to knock, and I will decide whether I answer. Love, Mom. I folded each letter and left them on their pillows. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't check if they read them, but I knew they would. They weren't cruel, just careless. And sometimes, carelessness needs confrontation, not comfort. The rest of the day passed in strange quiet. They moved through the house with less entitlement now, more hesitation, fewer slammed drawers, more closed doors. Not a single person asked what was for dinner. By the evening, I noticed something new. Gina had started packing the kids' clothes neatly in clear bins. Mark had taken down the posters in his room. Travis had unplugged the video game console from the living room TV. Little signals, movements, acceptance. After they went to bed, I sat on the front porch with a cup of mint tea. The breeze was cool. The air smelled like cut grass and pine needles. The porch light flickered, but I didn't mind. Dennis used to say he'd fix it next weekend, and it had been flickering ever since. I let myself smile. It wasn't a victory, not exactly. There was no parade, no applause, just space, just stillness. Just one woman sitting on her own porch, no longer invisible. And that, after everything, was more than enough. I started noticing the little things I loved again. Not grand things. Not vacations or bucket lists, or any of that nonsense they push on you in retirement brochures. Just the small, quiet pieces of life I'd stopped seeing. The soft clink of wind chimes in the morning breeze. The smell of coffee made exactly how I like it. The hum of the garden hose as I watered the rosemary I thought had died last year, but somehow, stubbornly, bloomed again. The day after I left the letters, I took the car out by myself. No one asked to borrow it. No one left the tank empty. I drove slowly through the neighborhood, past the library I used to work at, past the park where we took the kids when they were small. I didn't stop. I just watched. Let it all pass by like pages in a familiar book. At the market, I bought things just for me. Ripe nectarines, sharp white cheddar, a small loaf of cranberry walnut bread, a lavender hand cream I'd never allowed myself to buy before. I carried the bag home myself. It wasn't heavy. Back in the kitchen, I arranged the groceries neatly in the fridge. No clutter, no mystery takeout boxes. Just the food I liked, placed where I could see it. I stood there for a long moment with the door open, not thinking about anything, just there, existing. That evening, I lit a candle, not for any reason, just because I wanted to. I took a bath, the first real one in years. No knocks on the door, no Gina yelling for her hairdryer, no Travis needing the outlet for his clippers. Just me, the water, and silence. It felt like stepping back into my own skin. The next morning, I opened the old art box Dennis had given me on our 35th anniversary. I hadn't touched it in years. It smelled faintly of cedar and turpentine. Inside were pencils, watercolor tubes, half-used sketch pads. I sat up by the window in the sunroom. The light there was best before noon. I didn't try to be brilliant. I didn't even try to be good. I just let my hand move, tracing the edge of a teacup, the fold of a curtain, the curve of my own wrist. The hours passed without anyone asking me what I was doing. That's what I'd missed most, I think. Not just space, but uninterrupted time. Time that didn't belong to someone else. Time that didn't need to justify itself. Later that day, I took the gardening gloves from the shed and began pulling weeds. The flower bed by the mailbox had turned wild, overgrown with stubborn ivy and dry roots. My knees cracked when I knelt. My hands ached, but I worked slowly, carefully, patiently. I planted a few bulbs, daffodils mostly. Dennis always liked yellow. That evening, Travis knocked gently on my door. Not barged in, knocked. "Do you need help with anything before we go?" he asked. I looked up. He wasn't smug, just tired. "No," I said, "but thank you." He nodded. "Okay, just checking." The next day, Gina came into the kitchen while I was slicing fruit. "I updated my resume," she said quietly. "Applied to a couple front desk jobs." "Good," I said. She didn't ask for praise. She didn't offer excuses. Mark didn't say much at all, just kept packing. But he started cleaning the garage, unprompted, and when he was done, he came inside and handed me the spare keys without a word. I took them. No speech, no ceremony. That night, I stood in the backyard under a sky full of stars. The kids used to beg to sleep outside on summer nights, back when fireflies still danced in the trees and no one had cell phones yet. It all felt so far away, and yet, somehow, still mine. I didn't regret loving them. But I finally understood that love doesn't mean endless giving. Sometimes it means stepping back. Sometimes it means reclaiming the parts of yourself you gave away too easily. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it means finding joy again. Not in noise, not in praise, but in the soft rhythm of a life that finally belongs to you. They left on a Thursday. I hadn't planned it that way, hadn't marked the calendar or counted down. But when I opened my eyes that morning, I knew it would be the day. The house felt ready. The hallway was clear. No piles of laundry, no forgotten shoes or tangled chargers. The living room, once a maze of extension cords and empty mugs, stood open and still. Sunlight poured across the rug in long, warm stripes. It looked like it used to, like it belonged to someone who cared for it. Mark was the first to go. He didn't say goodbye. Just walked past the kitchen where I sat with my tea, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, a cardboard box in his arms. I watched him pause by the front door. He hesitated for a moment, just one, and I thought maybe he would turn around. But he didn't. The door opened. The door closed. That was it. Gina left mid-afternoon. The kids weren't with her. Their father had picked them up earlier in the week after what sounded like a difficult phone call. She looked tired, older than she had even a few days ago. The bravado had drained out of her. "I left the spare sheets in the laundry room," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Clean. I folded them." "Thank you," I said. She lingered, one hand on her suitcase handle. "I didn't mean for it to get like this." "I know," I said. She nodded, lips pressed together. "I guess I thought you'd always be here, that you'd always catch us." That was the problem. Gina didn't cry, but her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm sorry." "I know," I repeated. "Now go." And she did. Travis was last. He came downstairs slowly, dragging a black trash bag over his shoulder, like a boy sneaking out after curfew. He didn't look at me, didn't speak. Just moved toward the door like it offended him to still be inside. Halfway out, he stopped. "You really think you're better off alone?" I met his stare. "I know I'm not worse off." He didn't reply, just shook his head, muttered something I didn't need to hear, and left without another word. The door shut for the third time that day. I stood still in the kitchen for a long moment, waiting to feel something. Triumph, sadness, regret, relief. But what came instead was quiet, gentle and heavy and complete. They were gone, all of them. No more excuses, no more open hands waiting to be filled, no more walking on eggshells in my own home. I walked through the house slowly, room by room, like I was visiting it for the first time. The walls echoed faintly without their voices, but it wasn't a hollow sound. It was spacious, clean, mine. In the upstairs bathroom, I lit a match and dropped it into the air freshener can Travis had always hated. The scent of lemon and rosemary rose up in curls. I opened windows. I changed the Wi-Fi password again, even though no one would be asking for it. I took their names out of the emergency contacts on my phone, replaced them with my niece Hazel and my neighbor Carol. I stood in front of the mirror and stared at the woman looking back. She had more lines on her face than she used to, deeper ones. But her eyes, they were clearer than they'd been in years. I went to the backyard and sat on the porch step. The garden bed still needed weeding. The hose had a leak. One of the patio chairs wobbled. But none of it mattered. Because this was mine again. All of it. Not just the house, but the silence. The dignity. The days that followed were still, slow, and sacred. I cooked what I liked. I ate when I was hungry. I slept without listening for doors or footsteps, or someone else's bad decisions crashing into the night. I wasn't lonely. I was alone. And there's a difference. One is absence. The other is freedom. The first morning after they left, I woke up before the sun. Old habits. Years of rising early, to cook, to clean, to be ready for someone else's needs before they even opened their mouths. But this time, I didn't move right away. I lay there, listening. No thudding footsteps overhead, no slammed cabinets, no TV blaring, just the wind outside and the soft ticking of the wall clock Dennis bought in '89. I pulled the blanket higher and let myself rest a while longer. Not because I was tired, but because I didn't owe the day to anyone but myself. When I finally did rise, I dressed slowly, poured 1 cup of coffee, toasted 1 slice of bread. No rush, no mess, no second guessing. Later, I walked through the house barefoot, felt the cool floor under my feet. The house had always been a living thing to me, breathing, settling, remembering. And now, it felt like it was finally exhaling with me. I opened the windows. A breeze wandered in, light and curious. The curtains fluttered like they were relieved too. I watered the plants, took out the trash, played a record. Let the music echo through the rooms like it used to before the noise of other people filled the walls. I even danced a little, barefoot, with the broom as my partner. Just a few slow steps, a quiet laugh to myself. No one saw. That was the best part. By noon, I was in the sunroom, sketching. The daffodils outside hadn't bloomed yet, but their promise was visible. Green tips reaching, patient and sure. I drew them the way they would look when they opened. Later that day, Hazel called. We spoke for nearly an hour about her classes, her dog, her neighbor's new fence. She didn't ask me for anything. She just wanted to know how I was. I told her the truth. I feel like I've come back from somewhere, I said. Someplace I didn't even realize I'd been lost in. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I think that's the bravest thing I've ever heard, Aunt Jerry. I smiled. I didn't feel brave. I felt like myself. That night, I sat on the porch again. The wind had picked up. Leaves scattered across the lawn. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked, sharp, familiar. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and breathed in. This was not the life I thought I'd be living at 73. I had imagined grandchildren sleeping over, laughter, holidays where everyone brought a dish and I got to rest. But that's not how it turned out. And maybe that's okay. Because this life, the one I fought for, is honest, clear, uncluttered. I'm not angry anymore. Not at them, not at myself. I made mistakes. I gave too much. I stayed quiet too long. I let love disguise itself as obligation. But I also changed, and that matters more. To anyone reading this, anyone who's ever felt pushed into a corner by the very people they once held in their arms, it's not too late. You are allowed to draw the line. You are allowed to reclaim your space. You are allowed to say enough. You are not just useful when you serve. You are not only lovable when you give. You are still you, and that is reason enough to begin again. So if this story touched something in you, if you saw even a glimpse of yourself in these words, then do one small thing today. Reclaim 1 inch of your life. Clean 1 drawer. Say 1 no. Make 1 cup of tea just for you, and drink it slowly. And if you're willing, share this story. Not because I need the attention, but because someone else might be sitting in their kitchen, staring at the same old coffee cup, wondering if it's too late. It isn't. Not even close. The door isn't locked. You just have to walk through it. I did. And I'm not looking back.